Hello, everyone, and good morning, and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe, and today we have an author making their official debut here on the channel. My guest was born at the end of the baby boom era to a large military family and grew up in Southern California. In elementary school, he discovered Mark Twain and Andre Norton and was later introduced to Ray Bradbury, Robert Heinlein, and Isaac Asimov. During his senior year of high school, his older brother gave him a copy of The Hobbit and a book of Frank Frazetta's illustrations, opening his eyes to fantasy. And besides reading and rereading his favorite books, my guest has had an eclectic career over his 50 years. He is a U.S. Air Force veteran, bike shop owner, systems integrations engineer, college professor, and U.S. Navy air crew training systems contractor. When he's not working or writing, he's in his little workshop working with metal or wood, screen printing, or just playing with the many gadgets one accumulates. And in 2018, he challenged himself to write a short story to see if he could. And when he finished, the character of that story remained in his mind, asking him for more. That is how Fox Eyes came to be. So without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, author and veteran, Chris Lorelli. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I mean, this is one of the coolest things that's happened in a long, long time. And I've
Awesome.
got a dog joining me here next to me, so you're going to see a lot of movement this morning.
No problem. My dog will probably appear in. If you hear like a door open, that's probably him. He always likes to come in and just see what I'm up to. But Chris, I'm so excited to talk more to you about your book and more about you. So, can you tell us anything else that was not mentioned in your bio? Anything that you would like to share?
Um, well, the bio is, yeah, while it seemed kind of short, it is pretty complete. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff in my life. I'm in the process of retiring from working a full-time real job and changing my title from engineer to writer. So you know, at 65 years old, it's kind of strange to actually be saying I'm starting a new career for something I never thought I would be doing. Um, I the creative writing was one of those classes that I cut a lot in college,
Mm,
and it like when I was 58. I as I mentioned, I'm from a big family.
right.
Two of my brothers are writers.
Oh,
One writes historical books, um, and the other one writes military. I don't know how to explain it. He writes articles for like Jane Defense Weekly, that sort of
oh, okay. Yes,
thing.
yes.
And if you read Fox Eyes, you'll find out that the characters kind of resemble family members. Um, the experiences. So I've got three other brothers. I've got two sisters. And so my oldest brother, who writes the historical books, was talking about how he couldn't write fiction, and I thought it couldn't be that hard. And then I sat down and I wrote a short story, uh, starring the lead character in my book, who is an older protagonist. I mean, most of the books of this genre, the guys are in their 20s, maybe early 30s.
Right.
They're these Studley type people. Um, my guy is older, a little older, and and yeah, he served in the military, but he's not Joe Combat. And so anyway, I wrote this short story kind of one night early in the morning, and it wasn't very good, but
Mm,
the character seemed to be a good character. Um, Wherever the depth of everything else was pretty horrible, he was a guy. So I keep bouncing this thing here. I've got this pad on my lap, so my computer's going to move around a little bit too.
you're
Uh,
good.
anyway, so he stuck with me, and that's how I started writing. And I started writing a little bit more, and a friend of mine who used to write for Backpacker and Surfer and all that took a look at my manuscript and said, "You've got a book in there." So it kept going, and he is my editor now. And
Nice.
he wasn't not a fan of the genre, but he is now. So, and there we have it. I mean, so I've been doing all these things. I work and operate flight simulators now. I've integrated systems on aircraft. I've got a couple of different degrees, and who cares about those? Because nowadays it really doesn't matter if you can do the job. So I'm a happy woodworking nerd. How's that?
Nice, very nice. So, for fans who are just learning about, or I should say, listeners and readers learning about Fox Eyes for the very first time, what can you give us as like a little teaser of your book?
When people ask me what it's about, I generally just say it's monsters, machine guns, and mayhem.
All right, nice. I like it.
It's an urban fiction fantasy. Monsters are real, and there's an organization, a worldwide organization that kind of is a overview for the regional organizations that handle the problem. And the whole thing is we can't let the public know. I mean, what would happen if vampires showed up on the nightly news? You got to stop the stampede that would happen. So that's their job. Anthony himself, he gets sucked into it. He wasn't planning on it. He didn't know about it, but he survives an encounter, and he has some talents that the organization wants.
Nice.
So
That actually kind of sounds like, not gonna lie, it reminds me a lot of like the first Men in Black movie with Will Smith's character, who somehow stumbles upon, of course, the Men in Black organization and somehow gets roped into joining the organization. And that comparison is something that we will talk about later in the interview when it comes to, tropes or themes or inspirations. But before we get to that, let's actually go back in time a little bit. So, in your bio, Chris, that you sent me, you read, Mark Twain and a lot of other authors growing up. And then, of course, you read The Hobbit as well as other stories. So, would you say you were always a creative person growing up, or did that come about later in life?
I've always tried to be creative in some fashion, whether through use of my hands, woodworking. Every time I see something that interests me, I give it a try. Somebody once asked me if I could turn pens on a lathe. I became a pen maker. Somebody asked me, "Do you think you could learn how to screen print?" So I started designing my own screen printing equipment. And yeah, so that's all my little hobbies came from kind of a need to make something out of something else. So,
Nice, very nice.
it was always hands, drawing. I used to be able to draw. I used to be a little bit of an artist, not very much, not very good, but I enjoyed drawing. And unfortunately, I'm also a mountain biker, so I've sustained enough brain damage that I don't know how to draw very well anymore.
Oh no.
But so something had to come to replace that need, I guess. So I don't draw anymore, so now I write.
Awesome.
But
Awesome.
yeah, like I said, I'm willing to try anything. The only reason why I don't have a metal forge in the yard is my wife thinks I'll burn the house down. So, um, so yeah, I'll try anything if it keeps me busy and produces something interesting.
That's actually really cool. That actually, what you just said actually reminds me of my grandfather. My grandfather he was an incredible artist. He was and architecture. He loved to draw the building plans. He was incredible at it, and he also loved to build things. He actually built a replica of the Viking ship that was in the movie with Tony Curtis and Kirk Douglas,
The
the
Viking.
Vikings movie.
Mhm.
And he was incredible. Like, I remember he used to give so many incredible drawings. Like, and he wasn't like professionally trained or went to school for that. He just had like a knack for drawing like great illustrations because his background was in, of course, architectural drawings. That's what he specialized in, and it was such an amazing to see him just draw. And it's like you would think from his drawings and his collection that he worked for Warner Brothers, Universal Studios. No, he didn't. He was just that good of a drawer. And it was so fascinating, which also inspired me to pursue my passion, which I was originally an illustrator before I went into writing. And I found that that transition came about, my aha moment was that I'm not a good drawer illustrator, but I love these characters and I still want to have them with me. So I'm going to transform them into characters in a book and I'm going to work on describing them. So, Chris, for you, what was your aha moment when you wanted to fully pursue an idea in publishing as an author?
Um, I think it was when I actually finished the first project. When I finished Fox Eyes, the first rough draft, and I let a friend of mine read it, and he said, "Well, is there going to be any more?" And I went, "I don't know. I didn't intend this, but it sparked somebody's going to enjoy this, and if somebody's going to enjoy it, I will be more than happy to keep on going. As long as there's two people in, me and the other person reading the book. As long as I got two people enjoying it, then I'm going to keep on going." And that was basically the aha moment. Is there going to be more?
Absolutely. And that actually leads now perfectly into the next set of questions, which is the construction of the book. So let's go with the first icebreaker. So, Chris, going back to the moment where you were constructing the outline for the rough draft of Fox Eyes, what were the goals you had going into this project for yourself as the author, but also goals for your future readers?
To start with, I didn't have an outline.
Oh,
This
okay.
is something that came out organically. I had
All
no
right.
plan. It's just it was a natural progression in my mind. It was a natural progression of the character and those around him, and the people, the new people in my mind that were going to surround him, and and like I said, it just came out organically, and I do that a lot. I might do a really really rough outline. I've got this person. Um, this is characteristic. This is going to be his challenge, and this is how he's going to fix it. So maybe 4 or 5 lines.
All
Everything
right.
that comes in between, it's just the flow.
Hmm.
And I've been told that's not a good way to do it. Oops, but it seems to be working so far. I may be doing some more planning as it comes along. Um, I was listening to Craig Allenson speak at the end of one of his books here recently, and I do a lot of audiobooks because
Ooh,
I'm
nice.
always if I'm in the workshop, I've got a book running instead of music or anything like that. Because you got to wear hearing protection. You may as well have something going through your ears while you're doing it.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
and he was talking about, well, the series was done, but he had 3 more outlines in his head, and that's how the
Oh, okay.
series carried on because it wasn't done. So I might get to that point where I will start doing an outline. So I've got a better plan. So I've got a better production on the books. Fox Eyes took me about 4 years to finally publish.
Mm,
Um, the one that's following took me about a year and a half because I had a better understanding of everything going on.
right.
Um, it's coming. It's not there yet, but it's coming. Um, but yeah, so no outlining at all. It was just been an organic flow of writing.
Nice. That actually reminds me of a discussion a few of my author friends have brought up, which is, are you a planner or are you a plotter? And for viewers and listeners who don't know what that means, that pretty much refers to, for authors, if they have an outline and they plot everything out, to my understanding, in like an outline form, whereas planners, they have the story in their head, they begin writing it out, and organically the story just flows, and then they just change it when they realize, oh, that really doesn't work, so I'm going to go and fix it. There are many different ways for authors to bring about a book. I, for one, like having an outline. Yes, sometimes the book does change from the outline, but I like having like a good roadmap of how the story is going to begin and where it's going to end. But in the end, it's however you bring the book into fruition, which there's no right or wrong decision. It's whatever works for the individual. So going forward, so now that you've written the outline, you're now finding the cover artist, finding an editor, which you mentioned earlier was your friend who is now your editor. What was that experience like when you wanted to really fine tune it and get it out there? What was your mentality like at that stage of the journey?
The mentality was, excuse me, I wanted to get it right. Um, as an engineer, I was used to writing in a technical format. I'd
Mm-hmm.
never written in a format that was supposed to be entertainment. So when I
Mm.
handed it over to Nels, his first words, or after his first read through, his first comment was "Gadzooks," uh, uh, because there's punctuation and styles and flow and tone, and I didn't know any of that.
Mm.
Um, so he began teaching me through his comments. I mean, he went through 5 different reads. Well, probably more reads, but 5 different submissions
Right.
of this book, and it would come back with instructions. Well, this character is good, but you cut him off too short. You there's not enough description. What is he like? What is he thinking? And so the whole thing was, I want to get this right. I want to learn how to write,
Right.
and that has been the constant through the 3 books I've been working through so far, is learn how to be a writer. And that's what my editor is doing for me. He is teaching me to be a writer of entertainment and not technical data. So
Absolutely.
you'll find a lot of technical stuff in the book because that's who I am, and that's who the character is. Um, and I'll refer to the character as me a lot, because that's of course where the character came from. Life
Absolutely.
experience. Um, but but I will continue learning how to be a writer as long as I'm a writer, I guess, because he keeps coming up with different ideas and different paths and suggestions. He never demands anything, but he makes good suggestions.
Absolutely. And that's actually like my editor as well. She's based in the UK, Wales specifically, and she comes up with amazing, great suggestions of where the story could go. And I always joke that whenever I mention her name, she is the best reviewer and the strongest critic. She is brutal, she's honest, and I say that she's Welsh, so she's going to be upfront, but she is by far the kindest person I have ever worked with. And I'm going to be working with her for the rest of my time as an author. How many stories I have left in my head, I'm going to keep working with her because she is, just that good. So now going forward, so okay, you've just gotten your editor, you're fine tuning the book, you've gotten your cover art, I imagine either from a company or an independent artist, and now you have just clicked submit or publish on Amazon or whatever site or format you're on, and it's out there. So when that happened, what was the initial reaction like from friends and family when you finally told them, hey, I have a book out and I want you to go and give it a read?
It was exact. Well, let me say something here real quick. Cover artist is me. I've,
Oh, okay.
I've done my own cover art for the first two, and I'm in process on the third. Um,
All right,
but
nice.
yeah, I'm not hand drawing anything. It's all graphics programs. Thank goodness for graphics programs. Um, but um, but the initial reaction was, oh boy, we got to read it. My friends and my family have been really supportive of this. As a matter of fact, my eldest sister she lives up in Washington, and she came down to Southern California, and she had a box with like 10 reams of paper in it. So I
Mm.
would keep writing. Um, and so far, I've had friends take the book, and it's their vacation book. The book has traveled the world more than I have. They keep sending me pictures. Here it is in Aruba. Here it is in Tahiti. Here it is, in Brazil. It's my book's been to Brazil. I've never been to Brazil, um, and they've enjoyed it. I was amazed because I am published on Amazon, and I was amazed that I got a review from Australia. I don't know anybody in Australia. So somebody in Australia purchased my book and left me a 5-star review. And if that doesn't tickle your fancy, nothing will. Because it's one thing to have friends and family tell you how good it is, but when a complete stranger in another continent writes you a review saying it's a good book, are there going to be more? I hope there's going to be a series. That is definitely a good driver for, okay, I guess I'm doing this now.
Absolutely, 100%. And there's nothing better than getting like reviews, feedback on, your first book, because that's, as we'll talk later, that's usually either the make or break for a lot of authors. So, generally speaking, were the review for Fox Eyes positive, negative, or somewhere in the middle?
It's been mostly positive. I've only gotten 2 reviews that, one was a 4, one was a 3, and they didn't leave any narrative. The book was
Ah.
a 4, the book was a 3. So those 2 go away. Those 2 don't exist to me. All the other ones have been very positive. So I'm hoping it continues.
Nice. And now that kind of leads into the next question, which is what I like to call the first reflective question. So, what I mean by this reflective question is that, for all authors, when we publish our first book, there is a level of anxiety and hesitancy to put it out there because it is a matter of vulnerability. It's a reflection of our words, it's who we are as sometimes as people, because it tells a story that we are passionate about. And social media and the internet, it's a double-edged sword for authors of all types, indie, hybrid, and traditional. Yes, social media allows us to connect with our fans, our readers on a much broad scale. But then you also are susceptible to the trolls, the scammers, the review baiting people on social media and the internet. And that could be a lot, sometimes too much for one author to handle. And then on top of that, you have imposter syndrome in the back of one's mind telling you this book's not going to sell, no one's going to read this, you've wasted your time, etc. So for you, Chris, have you ever had those moments of imposter syndrome and or anxiety? And if so, or if not, what has disciplined you to continue with Fox Eyes and potentially other books you will write down the road?
Um, the reviews themselves and the fear of trolls, it really doesn't exist for me because this is like a lot of my other things I do in the workshop. I mean, I'm doing it mostly for myself. I enjoy writing. As long as I enjoy writing, I'm going to put stuff out. If other people don't like it, they don't have to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if somebody says, well, you know, whatever, this guy ripped off somebody else's work. Well, you know, yeah, hacks borrow, good writers steal.
That's true.
The inspiration has to come from somewhere. Because I haven't had that much of a troll experience yet, and I'm sure I will at some point, because they're out there.
Yes.
I'm a little older than most beginning writers. So there's a give a damn quotient in there. I don't have to depend on my books to make a living. I'm hoping people enjoy them. If they don't, it's okay, because I'm writing for the ones that do. It's kind of that simple. It's kind of fun to be in this stage of life and doing something like this.
Nice.
Yeah, that's about all I can say on it at the moment, because I haven't experienced anything really, really bad yet. We'll know when somebody goes on and says, "What a piece of trash." How do I react? I don't know, because it hasn't happened yet.
Absolutely. And you actually remind me of another author that I've had on the show who doesn't have the same kind of, mindset and temperament when it came to like their writings. And of course, the author I'm referring to, viewers and listeners, is Australian author Rob Shackelford, author of, let's look at my books, Traveler Inceptio. And that book series is incredible. And Rob's pretty much the very much same thing. Like, he writes because he's passionate about it, and if someone doesn't like it, okay, they don't like it. I'm not going to put a lot of effort into, responding back to them or anything like that. And sometimes that's just a good mindset to have, not to get caught up in all of the drama on social media and just enjoy interacting with the people who do enjoy it, or just have comments going forward of like what can be improved upon in book 2 or in the whole series, etc. And that leads into the next set of questions, which is now part of the business side of being an author. So, Chris, as you mentioned before, you're currently published through Amazon. For you personally, why did you feel that Amazon was the correct platform for you to independently publish your book, as opposed to, let's say, Barnes and Noble, Spark Books, Ingram Books, etc.?
Basically, it's the one that I knew about.
Okay.
I didn't know Barnes and Noble did an independent publishing. I know that Amazon takes a big chunk of the money for the publication. But once again, I really wasn't doing it to make a living off the book.
Okay.
So, maybe going forward, I'll be shopping a little bit more, and you might see my books end up on different platform. But right now, Amazon's easiest. They track everything for me completely. I mean, there's no gray areas. They tell me exactly what they're going to charge me and exactly what my cut's going to be. And so far it's been enough for new toys in the workshop.
Nice. That's awesome. So now, from that, of course, another thing to mention is, of course, the audience, because the audience is who we all market towards as authors. And when we write our books, we're the target audience because we know the story better than anyone else. But when you publish your own story, regardless if you're going down the route of a commercial fiction writer where you're writing to make money, or just simply writing because it's a passion and you are curious to see what others think of it, you do have to take in consideration, okay, who exactly am I going to market this book towards? So for you, Chris, do you have a good idea of who your audience is? And in your opinion, When should an author take into consideration of their audience?
Um, well, these days, I think you have to be aware of all the audiences because you've never heard of this writer, never heard of Chris Lorelli before. You've never heard of Fox Eyes before. I know I'm intending it for the urban fiction crowd, for people that enjoy kind of the dark side of government and guns and yeah, I write more conservative than a lot of people. But while I'm writing, I have to take into consideration that not all my readers are going to be conservative. Um, Stuff that I grew up being able to say in public. In today's world, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there are things that just because they're generational, um, I have to consider that a person of a younger generation won't get my humor,
Right.
and they could very easily be offended by something I say, just as a matter that it was okay for me. It's not okay now, and it still comes out sometimes in my writing. So
Okay.
so I'm not targeting exactly the sci-fi fantasy group. I'm not exactly targeting the urban fiction group because there's elements of all of it in there.
Right.
And then there's a wide range of age groups. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Once again, my protagonist is a little older, so it's going to appeal more to people maybe over 30 than it is to kids in their 20s, or maybe over 40 that it is to people younger. Um, so my language is kind of reflecting that, and the story. People that are older are going to understand what the character is going through a little bit more.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
That makes
and
sense. That makes a lot of sense. And sometimes, as authors, that is also crafting of itself, like really understanding who your audience is and like trying to figure out, okay, which ones are going to be, not necessarily open, but are going to enjoy this book a little bit more, or is it kind of side in this category or that. That just takes a lot of trial and error and just honing one's craft as time goes on. Now, in terms of, you mentioned age groups, where do you see Fox Eyes sort of falling in as like young adult, new adult, or adult fiction?
I'm thinking more adult fiction. Um, even a couple of my kids haven't read the book yet because they get into it and they think, oh, it's just dad. And I think the younger adults are going to feel that way about what I'm writing because a lot of me comes out in the book. And yeah, I'm dad, I'm grandpa, and a lot of my references are kind of going to go over somebody's head because they are older references. So I'm thinking an older adult, is going to enjoy my stuff more.
All
Um,
right, that's fair. That's completely fair. And you know what? I definitely think, a lot of authors really don't take into account, at least for me as well, of, their readership, like where their book falls into. Because I just write stories, like I write my stories in like the style of the books that I enjoy reading, and I don't really consider, the age group. I just write to write, and sometimes my books are read by people younger than me, some who are definitely older than me, and it's like, well, good, that's good. I'm targeting a wide audience, but then again, if you're an author that's specifically targeting one age group over the other, that's also a skill in of itself. I've talked with many authors on the show, especially authors who are YA authors specifically. That is a challenge to write books for a younger audience, and that is not easy to do. And that comes down to, finding your voice. And on that topic of finding your voice, it leads to another question, which I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on, Chris. And this comes courtesy of a fellow author who I interviewed on the show. Shout out to Eric Bowden again for this question. which is this: how have you balanced your individuality in your writing to showcase who you are as an author and as a person, while also balancing, the stories that you grew up with as a kid? Because there may be some references to past books, or maybe your style may have a homage to an author that you've really loved growing up. So how have you been able to balance the two to showcase both respectfully?
Um, well, since I am new at this, basically I'm writing kind of the way I speak, and
Ah, all
and
right.
and because it is a single point of view um, book, so it's all from the protagonist's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty easy for me to be in there, but I'm also I've read a lot of Jim Butcher. I've read a lot of uh, Larry Correa, and they've kind of created a kind of created a world rules for entities and stuff like that, and I try to follow their rules.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my homage to my favorite authors. Is if say you can't carry iron into the nether, and
Right.
that's pretty standard. You can't carry. I follow that. I don't try to make up new rules for things that were created by other people in the past.
Right.
Um, and so you got my voice, you got their rules, and that's how I'm doing it. Um, yeah, I wish I could phrase it better than that. As a writer, I don't speak well.
No, but that's absolutely true, and I actually like that, where it's like it's your writing, but you're following the rules of other storytellers that a lot of people like agree upon. Like a case in point, I had a friend of mine who was writing, their own homage to Lord of the Rings. They didn't want to be exactly like Lord of the Rings, like word for word, but they just wanted to follow the rules. And ultimately, their book became, truly, in a way, a spiritual successor to Lord of the Rings. And what I mean by that is she was able to develop her own language, its own symbols, everything, because Tolkien is one of her biggest role model authors, someone that she admires so very much. And that book is, of course, The Silent Witness, where it's her own story, but she's following the rules that Tolkien further improved upon with The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, and his other works. And honestly, if you're a fan of that author or those books, you're going to see it appear in the Silent Witness. And that kind of leads now into another topic, which I'm eager to hear your thoughts on too, Chris. So, as I mentioned before, well, from what you told me in the beginning of the interview, how Fox Eyes is in a world where monsters are real. There's an organization sort of keeping not so much the peace, but keeping the existence of the supernatural in check. So that way the public doesn't know. And then the main character sort of gets wrapped up in this world. And I made the comment that it's like the first Men in Black movie, where Will Smith's character gets involved with, of course, the Men in Black and joins the organization. And I know for authors, we always try to avoid tropes, cliches, or like references or anything like that. But if it's done correctly in a way that is unique and fresh, no one's going to pay any mind to it. So, Chris, ultimately, the story that you created for Fox Eyes, was that the intended story to be? Or was it something different? And then, just from either reading something or watching something, it just stayed with you. And then from those numerous references and inspirations, those led to the Fox Eyes story that it is now.
Um, it started out just the way I told it. There was nothing. I didn't even think about the Men in Black angle, anything like that. This was. I'm trying to think if there's anything in the past that could have influenced the idea. uh, but it pretty well came out and stayed just the way I told it.
Mm.
And I don't want to give too much away, but the character had an event happen, and of course he was in the presence of the authorities, and when he was kind of being not coerced, but convinced that this was the path to take, a family member walks in and says, "Open your eyes, dumbass." And so, and I could imagine this happening. I could imagine this happening to me.
Oh, all right.
And so that's how the story came. I mean, I think it is pretty original, but there could be something way back in there in this brain damaged mind of mine that was influenced to do it the way I did it. So, like I said, I never claim anything to be original. Even in the workshop, my designs aren't necessarily original. I always just throw my little twist on.
Nice. I love that. And it actually goes back to something that I used to say on the show a long time ago, which is writers are liars, cheaters, and thieves. We make stuff up, we cheat people out of time, and we steal from each other because the same story or stories have been told numerous times, just with either a facelift or a turn on its head. And if you look at that, it's actually kind of true. Like almost every story is similar to another. But for me now, looking at, my own works, I now feel what I like to call the 3 E's of writing: to entertain, educate, and enlighten. And I think it is very important, in all types of storytelling to accomplish the 3 E's, because you can educate somebody on like either a topic that you're passionate about or a theme. Entertain, of course, that's probably the biggest one. You want to entertain your readers. You want them to be invested in the story. And enlighten, you want them to take away a theme or some powerful message from your story. I mean, that's why we have, works of like Tolkien, Dune, uh, John Carpenter's Mars, and all those books. I mean, there are people who dedicate their lives to studying what the book was really trying to tell us, or what are the major themes of it, and so forth. And ultimately, down the road, we want to have that same experience with our own books, which leads to now probably the heavy hitter question, Chris. So I'm gonna brace yourself for this one. So when I started this journey of mine as an interviewer, as a podcaster, I initially did this just audio. No one saw me, no one knew what I looked like. And then 2 years ago, now going on 3, I jumped on YouTube and I started interviewing people, and that just snowballed into meeting so many talented authors from different backgrounds, different journeys and stages in their life, and the wide range of genres from urban fantasy, fiction, YA fantasy, gothic fantasy, and so forth. And it's so incredible. And from all these authors, I've come to the conclusion that no matter what path you go, indie, traditional, hybrid, There are two roads to be an author, to be known as an author. One is dedicated to storytelling and honing the craft. The other is dedicated to marketing and expanding on the awareness, bringing the brand to a new set of readers. And both roads have its own obstacles and hurdles, so forth. But generally speaking, for first time authors, especially those who really want to get into this and make a career out of this, the second path is the most enticing. But I'm going to say this right now, viewers and listeners, if you go down this journey as an author thinking you're going to get rich quickly, you're not. You're not going to make a business out of this. Even if you want to be a successful commercial fiction writer, it's not going to happen overnight. It takes time and patience, which leads to this statement. In this industry, there's no guarantee your first book is going to be the golden child that you hope for, that's going to give you everything you want. It's not going to happen. But there are exceptions to the rule, of course. There are authors whose first works have skyrocketed them to that success, and all the power to them. That is not an easy thing to do. But generally speaking, once more, you have this roller coaster of highs and lows. And that could be deflating for a first time author because now they're either joining trends, joining cliques, trying to match their story to the most popular trend and changing it just to fit in. And the readers are going to notice that this isn't organic. This was just artificially made. And the muse, the passion is going to die. And I've had a lot of authors say that it almost did kill it for them. And it's a hard pill to swallow, but it is something that must be discussed. So for you, Chris, what are your thoughts on this, comment in the publishing world that for first-time authors, there is no guarantee your first book is going to guarantee you your overnight success, but it should not be the nail in the coffin if being an author is something you truly are passionate about.
Years ago, I was reading. I can't remember where I was reading, but I was reading about Jim Butcher getting his deal. I can't remember if it was Tor with Penguin, but when he stocked the AR person, I think it's AR person, from whichever publishing company at Comic-Con. He had 4 books in his pocket. He did not hit it overnight with a single book. I mean, he went in to get his deal with 4 complete stories. The first book isn't going to get you anywhere. The
That's
first
true.
book is going to get you noticed, maybe. That's going to be the one that you start learning the business side. One thing I know, I have not publicized Fox Eyes hardly at all. Social media, LinkedIn, my own website, a couple of social media pages, come to think of it. But I have not done what it takes to get the word out that, hey, there's a new author. Here's the. But then again, I've been working a real career,
Right.
The whole time. So my time is limited.
Mm-hmm.
If you're new to this, just be aware. Just be aware that you got to put in the footwork and legwork to get people to notice you. You're not going to write a book, throw it on Amazon, and be a success overnight. Not going to happen. I
Absolutely.
personally was not looking for an overnight success, but as I'm going forward and I've got more books coming out, I'm starting to look for the people to help me. You need people to help you because you can't do it all by yourself. You, Gabriel, with the podcast, with the videos, your name is getting out there really, really well. I mean, I've read a whole bunch of reviews on you since you contacted me.
Thank you.
It's an awesome. You're putting in the work. And that's what an author has to do. They
Hmm.
cannot expect a single book to rise them up in the ranks and get them on the bestseller list. Um,
Absolutely.
you know, you got to work. You got to get your name out. You got to find somebody to help you do it. I've got another friend that is kind of becoming my de facto publicist. Um, now that I'm retiring from the day job, she is getting me readings. You got to get out and let people hear your words. Um, saying there's a book is one thing. When people hear the words, you get their interest, and and so yeah, put in the work. Keep writing. Don't stop writing because you don't have a successful book on your first
That's
try.
right.
Um, and because once again, you've got the stories inside you, they got to come out. So, and what does it take to keep writing? You know, it takes a little bit of personal effort. That's it. The real effort is getting the word out and doing the work to get the word out.
Absolutely. And you're right. It's a grind ultimately. It's a hustle, as one of my friends likes to say. It's a lot of work to now market one's book. Like it was work to create the book. Now you got to switch that brain to now go into business mode, marketing your book, really honing it in like this book is, perfect for these readers, or looking for a new book this holiday season, going out to conventions, making the commitment because it takes money to market one's book. It is. And sometimes that is the one thing a lot of authors struggle with. I am still finding ways to market my book, and I've been fortunate enough to have friends who have shown me some new methods and new tools to help me in my own journey, which I now turn over to you, Chris. So when you published Fox Eyes and the reviews started coming in, were there any people you would want to give a personal shout out to, besides friends and family, of course, but other authors that you may have interacted with either on social media, LinkedIn, or met in person who have helped you understand the business a little bit better?
Well, Yvette Diaz, who
Hmm.
I work with personally, um, she is in the corporate office for the company I currently work for.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah, I am a government contractor. I don't work for the government, but I take care of the Navy's flight simulators um,
Mm.
out here in Southern California. Yvette is one of our corporate people in Florida, and
Ah, okay.
she's the one that gave you my name.
Hmm.
Um, and we have sat and we've talked, you know, about writing, about how to find an editor, um, how to get the word out on our books, and Yvette's been wonderful. Um, and as a matter of fact, her book is on my reading list. I've got a big stack of reading lists nowadays.
Same here with mine.
Um, and and then of course Nels Noreen, who is my editor, who has also made a lot of suggestions on the business side because he's been in the business as an independent writer, and uh, and if I've known Nels most of my life, he was one of my older brother's friends, and we got to work together when we were both in college for a short time, and those were fun days in the shoe store. And who would think that we're definitely not doing shoes anymore, but we're still working together. It's a wonderful thing. But um, and then there's well, it, the my proofers, the people that proofed the book for me, and that still put up with me putting into the you know that they're receiving copies in their email whether they want to or not, and they've come up with great suggestions. Listen to everybody when they're suggesting how to get the word out. Especially if you're an older writer like myself who I don't do Instagram. I don't, because it's not what we do.
Right.
But I now have an Instagram account, and it is linked up to how many others that, there's stuff popping up online saying, hey, your connection has got a new book out. And so little things you can do. And it's all suggested by all these people that have got my book, or I've worked with, or I'm working with currently. And it's fun to talk with other authors.
Right.
It's fun to talk with Yvette outside of doing government business. So it's talking writing. And I don't get that opportunity very often. But hopefully, through you and through more people out there, I do get the opportunity to talk to more people who are writers and are going through this experience.
Absolutely. And as a final question to this incredible interview, Chris, to the readers and listeners out there watching this episode right now, what is your word of wisdom to them who want to get into this industry because they have a story they want to share?
Don't be afraid. Put yourself out on the limb. If you can't afford to have prepay to have your book published, find yourself somebody to do it up front, like Amazon. Does Barnes and Noble do this too?
Barnes and Noble, yeah, Barnes and Noble does do indie publishing as well. I'm actually currently, all my books are on Barnes and Noble, but I do plan on at least starting the new year to get all of my books transferred over to Amazon, because Amazon, of course, has the European market, unlike Barnes and Noble, which only does domestic in the United States.
Okay, so find that company that will get your book out there. Don't stop writing. It doesn't take all that much to sit down. If it's a paragraph a day, a page a day, it doesn't take that much to get your idea on paper. Don't necessarily do it at the computer. I find a lot of my best writing's done when I'm on my bicycle. The hard part is getting it down into the Word document. Well, my brain still has it, but spend some time. Spend relaxing time thinking about your story, but don't ever stop writing. Take a break when you need to. This isn't a road race.
No, it's not.
It's a marathon. So, run your marathon, run it on your time, but get it done. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely.
4 years on the first book. Just, but it's out there. It's published.
Yeah, I know the exact feeling. My book, I was still writing in graduate school back in like 2019, and it took me 5 years to get that out. And then, the next one was published a year later. The other one took 2 years later. It's whatever you feel. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon, because you only get better as time goes on. I mean, look at all the authors that we know now. I mean, their books were not overnight successes. It took them years. Sometimes it was literally a gamble for them to publish it, whether or not it was financially sound. And look at them. They're very successful. And, ultimately, as we talked about before, that could be if you want to be a commercial fiction, or just write because you're passionate about writing and not really interested in the money. Ultimately, viewers and listeners, it's up to you. Whatever decision you want to do, it has to be one that you feel is the right one for you. And with that, we will end it here. This amazing author interview. Want to give a huge thank you to Mr. Chris for coming on the show. And we wish him the very best going forward. Now, Chris, before we end, where can people find and engage with you on social media? And where can people purchase your book for the holiday season?
Fox Eyes is on Amazon. There is another Fox Eyes on Amazon, I came to find out. It's not as good as mine. But if you search under Christopher Lorelli, you'll find me. I have I accept emails, and that would be unclechris805@hotmail.com. I'm also on Facebook, just Chris Lorelli. Most of my woodwork and that kind of stuff can be found on my Crafted by Christopher page. And that's part of Facebook also. So I always see messages and stuff on there. And then I also have a website, www.craftedbychristopher.com. And that's got everything from glass making through writing on it. So there you go.
Awesome. I will link all those down below in the description of this video. Thank you everyone for joining us for another amazing author interview on the channel. And I do want to let everyone know I only have 3 episodes left for this month, because after which I will be taking a 2-week hiatus for the winter vacation. So you may not see me for the rest of December, but you will see me at the start of the new year. So just keep following my social media to stay up to date. And speaking of social media, I'm going to go out of frame really quick, viewers and listeners. If you're looking for a new book this holiday season, Michael, Last Angel of Earth is 50% off on Barnes & Noble. And if you want to get the 50% off, make sure to go to my post on LinkedIn or one of my videos that has the code to get the 50% off. And not also Michael, but also The Gathering and Amonis, Son of Persia. They are also 50% off ebook versions, I must add. So they're available from now until the 31st. So if you know someone who's looking for a new read, definitely share this video with them and spread the word. Spread the word. That's all we can do as authors. So thank you again, my viewers and listeners. A huge thank you to Mr. Christopher Lorelli for coming on the show and telling us all about Fox Eyes and what we can expect next in the series. Chris, thank you again for coming on the show. I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks again for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. And as always, viewers and listeners, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. And this is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out, wishing you a wonderful day.